Mohandas Gandhi was born on October 2, 1869 in Porbandar, India to Karamchand and Putlabai Gandhi. He was raised as a devout Vaishnavi Hindu and Jain. The principles of peace and tolerance that both of these beliefs instilled in young Mohandas would become essential to his later work. Gandhi had been an unremarkable student in grade school and dropped out at 13 years old to marry his wife, Kasturba. After scraping through his entrance exams to Bombay College, it's hard to believe that someone so unremarkable would grow to be one of the world's most famous resistance leaders. After finishing his schooling in London, Gandhi took up a one-year contract with a law firm in South Africa, where he began his crusade against the cruelty of British rule. He led non-violent protests in Johannesburg for 7 years in order to secure Indians in South Africa the right to vote. Upon his return to India in 1915, Gandhi threw himself into the political world and continued his efforts to liberate the Indian people from the British Raj. The British continued to oppress and abuse Indians when they passed the Rowlatt Acts in 1919, which allowed Indians to be imprisoned without trial. By 1920, Gandhi and the Indian Congress had planted the seeds of Indian nationalism. Gandhi had spread this support by traveling to small villages and speaking his truth to the people. His passion for a non-violent liberation of India brought the country together like nothing had before, with both Hindus and Muslims working together towards a common goal. However, after an outbreak of violence in 1922, Gandhi called off the protests and was arrested and imprisoned for sedition. He was later released in 1924. Unfortunately, the unity between Hindus and Muslims had wavered during his stay in prison, and civil unrest between the communities began to spring up. In 1930, Britain imposed a severe tax on salt and banned Indians from producing it themselves. The mineral, which is essential to human nutrition, became too expensive for the majority of Indians to afford. This unjust tax outraged Gandhi, who set out on the largest protest yet, the Salt March. Gandhi began on March 12th in the town of Sabarmati, stopping to speak about the injustice of the British and the effects of nonviolent protest in small towns along his journey. During these stops, more and more people joined his march, and by the time he reached the Arabian coast on April 5th, he had amassed thousands of followers. The massive crowd stormed the beach and collected salt in defiance of British laws against salt production. Over the following months, over 60,000 Indians, including Gandhi himself, were imprisoned. In 1942, World War II was in full swing, and Gandhi saw his opportunity to negotiate for India's liberation. He devised a plan to offer Indian cooperation with the war effort in exchange for a transfer of power from Britain to India. His plea was rejected, and this rejection sparked the Quit India movement, which called for the complete and immediate removal of British power. Britain reacted harshly to this movement, imprisoning most Indian political leaders, including Gandhi and his wife Kasturba. During this sentence at the Aga Palace, Gandhi went on a hunger strike in order to protest their unjust imprisonment. Unfortunately, while he and the other political leaders were later released, Gandhi's wife Kasturba would pass away in the Aga Palace in early 1944. Negotiations for the liberation of India resumed in 1945, with Gandhi advocating for a unified India and the Muslim League insisting on separating the nation into Muslim and Hindu states. During negotiations, riots between Hindus and Muslims were rampant throughout the country, and in 1947 a decision was finally reached. Britain would relinquish its authority in the domain, and it would become the Hindu-dominant country of India and the Muslim-dominant country of Pakistan. Gandhi was distraught by this separatism and began a tour of India, visiting riot-torn areas to preach peace and acceptance. It was during one of these tours, on his way to morning prayer in Delhi, that Gandhi was shot and killed by a Hindu conservative. Though his life was cut short by an act of bigotry, Gandhi's message of social acceptance, unity, and peace live on. His acts of nonviolent protest inspired some of the world's most well-known civil rights activists, and the people of India honor him as the father of their country. In a world so fraught with social divisions and political issues, Gandhi's principles are more relevant than ever. Using the forces of nonviolent activism, perhaps we can change our world for the better.